I was still wearing my heavy white wedding dress, sitting completely handcuffed on the cold concrete curb outside my own reception at the Brown Palace in Denver. The flashing red and blue lights from the patrol cars were reflecting off the historic hotel doors, while my mother-in-law stood on the sidewalk screaming at the cops. "That is my $30,000 Cartier bracelet," she yelled, pointing a shaking finger at my face. "She stole it right off my wrist." My bridesmaids were huddled near the valet stand, absolutely sobbing, their expensive makeup completely ruined. My husband was just standing frozen on the steps, staring blankly at the scene, still holding a half-empty champagne flute in his hand like a complete idiot. "My name is Jessica. I am 28 years old. That was supposed to be the absolute best night of my entire life. The jewelry she was aggressively talking about did not belong to her. It was mine. It was my mother's. My mom died when I was 19 years old. It was a brutal fight with ovarian cancer. When she passed, she left me exactly one thing of real monetary value. It was a small, faded velvet box holding her entire wedding set inside. It contained a 1.5-carat diamond engagement ring, a thin diamond wedding band, and a heavy tennis bracelet packed with 14 real diamonds that she and my dad bought together in 1998, right after she finally got her nursing degree. It was formally appraised at $22,000. I kept the official GIA authentication papers locked in a safe deposit box at my bank with my name on it. I had told my mother-in-law Linda weeks ago that I deeply wanted to wear my mother's jewelry for my wedding. I genuinely thought she would understand the sentiment. She is 60 years old, born into old Denver money, lives in Cherry Creek, and practically lives at her country club. She is the kind of woman who wears full Chanel just to walk through the grocery store. When I pulled the velvet box out and showed her the bracelet at our rehearsal dinner, she barely glanced at it. "Oh," she said, letting out a heavy sigh, "it is cute. But the Carter women always wear the Carter bracelet on their wedding day. It has been passed down in our family for 80 years. It is real Cartier." I looked down at the diamonds in my hands. "I want to wear my mom's," I told her, my voice getting tight. "She cannot be here to see me get married. This is the only way she is actually here with me." Linda smiled. It was that tight, forced smile she always does when she is annoyed. "Of course, dear," she said softly. "Wear your little bracelet." My husband Ethan, who is 30, stepped in. "Mom, it is her big day," he said, putting his hands in his pockets. "Just let her wear her mom's stuff." She rolled her eyes and took a sip of her wine. "You are right," she said loudly. "It is just cheap costume jewelry anyway. Who is even going to notice it?" It was absolutely not costume jewelry. The actual wedding ceremony and the reception were entirely perfect, right up until 9 o'clock. We had a massive open bar, an amazing live band, and 140 happy people on the dance floor. I left the room to go to the bridal bathroom. When I walked back into the ballroom, I noticed my small white clutch that was sitting on our sweetheart table was zipped completely open. I panicked because my mother's bracelet was suddenly gone from my wrist. I had taken it off for exactly 5 minutes to wash my hands and tucked it deep into my clutch because the clasp was feeling a little loose. I looked across the dance floor and saw Linda holding it. It was right there in her hand. She was aggressively waving it in the face of our panicked wedding planner. She took a deep breath and screamed, loud enough for the entire ballroom and the live band to hear. "She stole my bracelet, my Cartier. I left it sitting on the table and she literally put it inside her purse." The music completely stopped. Everyone turned around and stared. My husband Ethan walked over to his mother looking completely confused. "Linda," I said, my heart hammering in my chest, "that is my mother's bracelet. You know that. You literally saw it in the box last night." She glared at me with absolute hatred. "Are you calling me a liar right now?" she yelled. "This is my grandmother's Cartier from 1942. It has my family initials engraved right on the inside. You stole it because you were insanely jealous you didn't get to wear it down the aisle. Ethan, search your purse right now." Ethan looked back and forth between us. "Mom, please calm down," he whispered, looking at the staring guests. "Let's not do this right here." She already had her cell phone out. She dialed 911 on my actual wedding night, while standing in front of 140 of our closest friends and family members. "Yes, police," she said into the phone, her voice shaking with fake terror. My daughter-in-law just stole $30,000 worth of family jewelry from me at the Brown Palace Hotel. 2 Denver police officers came walking through the ballroom doors in 12 minutes. They were big guys, and they looked incredibly uncomfortable and embarrassed to be interrupting a wedding. They quietly asked me to step outside to the street. Linda closely followed us through the lobby, still tightly holding my mother's bracelet in her fist. She was actively crying completely fake tears, telling the cops, "I knew she was just after our family money from day one." They walked me out to the curb and put me in cold steel handcuffs. I was standing on the street in my $4,000 Maggie Sotero lace dress. My dad had to walk outside and see his dead wife's diamond bracelet clutched in another woman's hand, while his only daughter was standing in police cuffs. The cops looked at me and asked, "Ma'am, do you have any actual proof this jewelry belongs to you?" "Yes," I sobbed, struggling against the cuffs. "My dead mother left it to me. I have the official GIA certificates in a bank vault. I have dozens of photos of her wearing it since 1999. And just look at the back of the clasp. Look at the engraving. It says MR to LR 1998. Mary Rose to Lauren Rose, my mom's initials. It absolutely does not say Carter." Linda panicked and gripped the bracelet tighter. "She engraved it herself," Linda shouted at the cops. "She completely defaced my family heirloom." Then my maid of honor, my cousin Sarah, came sprinting out the heavy hotel doors holding my cell phone in the air. She had been quietly videoing the reception from the corner of the room to send to my mom's sister, who was too sick to fly in for the wedding. "I have it on video," Sarah yelled, completely out of breath. 20 minutes ago." She hit play and held the screen up for the cops. It was a clear video taken from the camera angle right behind the sweetheart table. It clearly shows Linda walking past our empty chairs when I was in the bathroom. The video shows her looking around the room to see if anyone is watching. She reaches down and unzips my white clutch. She pulls my mother's diamond bracelet out. She snaps it onto her own wrist. Then she unhooks her own thick gold Cartier bracelet, the real Carter family one, and she physically shoves it deep into my clutch. Then she zips it shut and walks away. She was deliberately framing me. She was going to swap the bracelets. Her plan was that when the police inevitably searched my clutch, they would find her actual Cartier sitting there and assume I stole it, and she could freely walk away keeping my mother's real diamonds. The cop slowly turned his head and looked at Linda. "Ma'am," he said, his voice completely dropping, "open your purse right now." Linda hugged her expensive leather purse against her chest. The purse was physically locked shut. "No!" she snapped, her fake tears completely vanishing. "You absolutely cannot search me." The cop stepped closer to her on the sidewalk. "You called us out here to report a felony theft," he said sternly. "We absolutely can." He took the bag and forced it open. Sitting right on top of her makeup bag was my mother's empty, faded velvet box, and right underneath it was a folded yellow pawn receipt from last month. It was from a shady pawn shop down on Colfax Avenue. The cop read the printed receipt out loud. "One Cartier love bracelet, 18-karat gold, serial number attached. Pawned for $8,000 cash. Customer name, Linda Carter." She had secretly pawned her own priceless family Cartier bracelet 3 weeks ago to pay off a massive gambling debt at the casinos in Blackhawk. Ethan later confessed to me that she secretly goes up there to gamble twice a week. She desperately needed a physical replacement to flash around at the wedding so her wealthy sisters wouldn't ask questions. So she decided it was easier to steal my dead mother's diamonds and pass them off as her own. I looked over at Ethan. All the color had completely drained from his face. He finally set his champagne glass on a ledge and walked over to us. He reached out and physically ripped my mother's diamond bracelet straight out of his mother's hand. He gently put it back onto my wrist and locked the clasp. He turned to the 2 police officers. "My mother just actively tried to steal $22,000 worth of jewelry from my wife on our wedding day and filed a completely false police report," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "I want to press full charges right now." They unlocked my handcuffs and took them off my wrists. They immediately grabbed Linda, pulled her arms behind her back, and clicked the cuffs onto her. They arrested her in her expensive navy blue mother-of-the-groom dress, right there on the sidewalk, in front of all her wealthy country club friends who were now crowding the hotel doors. When they processed her at the police station, they dug into her background and found out she had actually done this before. She had secretly stolen and sold her own mother's wedding ring 2 years ago to cover her losses. I did not drop the criminal charges. Linda spent her entire night sitting in a holding cell in the Denver County Jail. She has a mandatory criminal court date next month for attempted felony theft and false reporting to authorities. The famous Carter bracelet is still sitting behind the glass at that pawn shop on Colfax. Her husband was so humiliated, he entirely refused to go pay the debt to get it back. Ethan and I went on our honeymoon to Mexico 3 days late to deal with the police statements. I wore my mother's diamond bracelet every single day we were at the resort. Yesterday afternoon, Linda called my cell phone from her sister's house, which is where she is currently staying because her husband changed the locks. "Jessica, I am so incredibly sorry," she whined into the phone. "Can we please just forget all this happened? Family forgives." I held the phone to my ear and looked down at the diamonds on my wrist. "Linda, you called the police and had me handcuffed on the street for stealing my own dead mother's wedding jewelry on my actual wedding night," I said completely flatly. "No. Family remembers, and I have the entire thing saved on video."